then, 7:36, and the colourful Korea Queer Cultural Festival went ahead recently, despite fierce, consistent, and sometimes pretty graphic opposition by conservative groups defending both Korean and Christian values. Incoming Justice Minister Kim Kyung-woo, when asked by lawmakers for his stance on gay rights and on even whether these rallies should be allowed to take place, said freedom of expression must be respected, but I think sometimes it should be limited if it goes against public security and social norms, and also added that he supported laws outlawing same-sex marriages. Does that make your blood boil when you hear that? Or do you want to support Korea's stance on limiting gay rights in this country? We welcome both sides, and please do feel free to explain your view. You can text us #1013 for 51 per message, and reach us on Kakao Talk free of charge by searching TBS via plus friend or plus Chingu. Messages welcome in English or in Korean. Let's bring in Ms. Candy Yoon, gay rights activist, member of the Korea Queer Cultural Festival's organizing committee. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for joining us. Now, you've been facing consistent opposition even before the festival got underway. Can you experience or tell us about what you faced when you were there at the festival?
There were so many conservative homophobic protesters during the Pride Parade in last June, and they across the street from us are saying many offensive things. And even some people had blocked our pride posts and thrown objects to interrupt us.
When even the incoming Justice Minister, so at government level, is defending this limitation on gay rights, as I just read out, how do you feel about that?
He was nominated as the Prime Minister of the Ministry of Law, and that the Minister of Law have a charge of universal human rights. And he cannot be the Minister of Law. He just gave up to human rights advocacy. Is it possible to be a right person? He cannot be a right person.
But even after those comments, the National Assembly did offer their approval. So obviously lawmakers didn't agree with you as a whole. But can you at least celebrate some movement forward based on the festival this year? Do you feel that public awareness has actually been able to shift to a more positive place?
Yeah. This was really significant because as you may know, lots of people must know about it. This year's Pride Parade wasn't easy to hold. We had to report the Pride Parade to Namdaemun police station. So the LGBTI community lined up for a whole week to report, but we were still rejected, and we went through the administrative judgment in order to march our Pride Parade.
Would you do things differently in the future? One thing that struck me, while, like many, I was somewhat taken aback by the graphic nature of the conservative opposition displaying obscene images and so on. It struck me that maybe Korea would benefit from a slightly different approach. Fight conservatism with conservatism, for example. For example, when we see festivals in other countries and they're full of color and partial nudity, I'm not going to say there was anything too obscene on the gay rights side either. Do you think that it would benefit from a different approach from your organization in the future?
Well, yeah, you mean just about the future?
Well, I mean, maybe in the future it would be possible to approach this issue in a way that holds up a mirror to these protesters, so that rather than feeding that image of the LGBT community being all about, the things that they're opposing, presenting an almost conservative image of homosexuality. And let's face it, a lot of gay people out there are conservative.
Well, that images is just images. Have you ever been to the Pride this year?
Yes, I mean, and like I said, I totally salute your efforts. I just struck me on viewing it that it fed in a way the protesters themselves, and we saw this crescendo of both sides opposing one another. And homosexuality in Korea can be such a closeted affair that what I saw at the festival didn't necessarily represent the homosexuality that I've witnessed in Korea. At the same time, you brought it to the agenda, and we're discussing it now. And you're right, an image is an image, and the fundamental issue here is about human rights. We're going to hear the other side of the conversation now. Candy Yoon, thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, thank you.
Candy Yoon, gay rights activist, member of the Korea Queer Cultural Festival. I continue to welcome listener feedback on this as well. You can find us by text, ##1013 for 51 per message. Pastor Paul Morgan Warren is from the Sojourn English Ministry operating out of Korea. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
What was your impression of this festival at Seoul Plaza this year?
Well, it was a first for me. I went there to check it out. I didn't protest and I didn't celebrate. But what stuck out was that it's just getting bigger and more noticeable to Koreans than in previous years.
But so too is the opposition trying to rally itself in response. As a pastor yourself, when you see Christian imagery alongside pretty graphic images of the way in which homosexuality is clearly thought of by these conservative groups, isn't that pretty offensive to you?
Yeah, well, I wonder if they were inspired by graphic abortion pictures in the U.S. But I can understand why the protesters would be against that kind of event. But really, for me as an American, I love freedom and love freedom of speech, even if people I disagree with, even if they're even if they're sparsely dressed. So I'm not so against giving them freedom of speech. But that's an interesting point you raise about the graphic nature of the signs too. It's something to think about.
Well, I mean, both sides. There was a lot of flesh on show, and that's the point I was trying to make with Candy Yoon, is that maybe that it was distracting us from the fundamental conversation here about human rights, because there are very few other normal situations in Korea other than maybe a beach where people walk around scantily clad. We've got a message here on Kakao Talk. Craig Bartlett says, if Kim Hyung-un thinks that the LGBT community of Korea will just cower before his threats to crack down on marches and festivals, he's got another thing coming. The judicial precedent allowing this has been set. He should think long and hard before he tries to reverse it. Pastor Paul Morgan Warren, would you agree at least that fundamentally these sorts of rights and rallies have to be allowed to proceed as a basic human right?
With freedom of speech, yes. My biblical view is much less popular in America now, and I hope I'm still allowed to view what I believe, and I would say the same thing for other people too.
Yeah. So when you hear of a justice minister candidate speaking so frankly against not just same-sex marriage but also the rallies themselves, does that not raise a certain level of concern in your mind? With
American values of freedom of speech that are supposed to be here too, yes. Although America's views on this issue change so rapidly, on the other hand, I guess it just shouldn't surprise us that Korea hasn't made that same shift yet.
The thing is, from your point of view, you could quote a number of Bible verses, I'm sure, that would defend your position in opposing same-sex marriage, right? Can I just get a yes on that before I continue?
Yes, it is the traditional historic view from the Bible.
Yes, but we can't, in a secular society, use that as the basis for opposing same-sex marriage. Can you, on any other grounds, oppose same-sex marriage outside of religious arguments?
Oh, from at a political level?
Political, tradition, social, cultural, anything, because it seems to me, even as a Christian myself, that this is not a Christian state. We cannot impose that on the population as a whole.
Yeah, so my biggest issue is just that Christians should continue to believe what the Bible says, but if it's in terms of what motivates us to change laws, that is a much more complicated issue. Our motivations for creating laws and morality come from many places, and I don't think that we should be completely banned from having any religious motivations behind making morality and laws. But it's true that in a modernized world, you're right, we're not. There should be a separation of church and state. Yeah.
And the thing is, homosexuality itself is nothing new. As you know from the Bible, there's plenty of references to it. Maybe not as many as there could be if there was fierce opposition at that time. But nevertheless, it's not a new issue. So to argue against relations of this nature on the basis that they didn't exist in traditional times, again, as someone who's not an advocate of same-sex marriage, are you disappointed by the base level of the arguments that are being put forward on your side of this debate?
Actually, yes. As you know, I'll be in a debate about this soon, and I agree with my debate opponent that we're both against when the protesters make up statistics that aren't true. Like I think we heard 70% of gays have AIDS, and really the true number of about 19 makes me sad enough already. I don't need to get angry about a false statistic.
Yeah, indeed. Well, we wish you luck in that debate. Do you want to just let us know where that's going to be, just so that if anyone's interested in participating?
Yes, it's about what the Bible says on this topic. It's at the Hamilton on Saturday, the 25th at 6 p.m. Just the Hamilton
No,
third floor.
the Itaewon area of Seoul. If anyone
Yes,
wants further
exit one of
details,
Itaewon. Thanks.
they can text us #1013 for 51 per message. Pastor Paul Morgan Warren, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks.
Paul Morgan Warren operates the Sojourn English Ministry in and around the Incheon area of Korea. We continue